want to welcome everybody to this week's episode of the Gen Z Show, brought to you by Generation Ziegler. I am your host, James McLamb, and I am joined this week by my two guest hosts. You've seen her before, and she's back again from North Carolina State University. Please welcome Sarah Beth McLamb. How are you doing, Sarah Beth?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. How's college going for you?
Pretty good. It's all online, so makes it easy. Short walk to class,
Makes it easy and it makes it difficult all at the same time. And from New Mexico, a great friend of Generation Ziegler, one of the finest ones we've ever had come through our legacy, our youth certification program. I would call her Kinsey Creighton, but she has just recently gotten married. Now she is Kinsey Shelley. How are you doing, Kinsey?
Hey, James. I'm doing good. Thanks for asking, and I'm still getting used to that name change too, so don't worry about it.
How is married life treating you? How many weeks have you gone since, as we're recording this, how many are you?
Yeah, so it has been almost 2 months. Yeah, July 25th was the big day, so yeah, it's been good. So far, so good. We're still married.
He's not going to kick you to the curb yet?
Oh, please. No, of course not. He's behaving, so I'll keep him around too.
That's good to hear. That's a positive thing. Well, today's guest is an old friend of Generation Ziegler, Randy Gravitt. Now, Randy is one of our guests from our spring community calls, spring 2020 community calls. But he was the last guest that we had on the calls before we started recording them. So if you go into the YouTube channel and you look for him and you search for the previous call, you're not going to find it because it was his call and his thing that our audience said, hey, we want to hear more about this. We want to go back and listen to them. So we started recording them and putting them up after Randy was our guest. But Randy's going to be our guest today. Sarah, tell us a little bit about Randy.
Well, Randy is a CEO, and his definition of CEO is a Chief Encouragement Officer. So his life is dedicated to helping others grow, and his career is dedicated to helping young people find leadership and be better leaders. So he does this. He works with sports teams. He works with businesses. He works with youth organizations. He does speaking engagement. He has books out. He has an app. So he does a lot investing in young people and, as he calls it, older leaders, just helping them become the best version of themselves.
And Randy is one of the chief leadership trainers for Chick-fil-A. So he is responsible for the curriculum that a lot of the managers on all different levels that Chick-fil-A has. And that's how he and I got to know each other. He's going to share just some really powerful insights in the leadership. Kids, what's some of the things that our audience can look forward to in this episode?
Yeah, for sure. In this episode, we're really blessed to have Randy here, and he's talking about the book that he helped put together, The Heart of Leadership, and some of the curriculum that he's been able to build from that book that is really, really valuable for young people. Myself included, something that I wish I would have learned years ago and that I plan on applying today. He talks about leadership in business, in families, and how leaders really add to the culture of any organization and add to individuals themselves. So this is one that you really don't want to miss.
And audience, you're going to really want to take notes on this, especially when he gets to talking about hard leadership. There's a lot of things that Randy says today that are quotable. They're hashtag worthy, as we say at Gen Z on the Gen Z Show. You need to hashtag it. You're going to want to take notes, and you're going to want to look into show notes and get the resources that he is offering to you for free. So with that, let's jump straight to our interview with Mr. Randy Gravitt. All right, guys. Randy, welcome back to the Gen Z Show. How are you doing?
I am doing great. I'm so glad to be back with you guys. It was fun. We were together a few months back, and I'm excited to have an opportunity for round 2 here. So thanks for having me back.
And for those members of our audience who don't remember, we did these live community calls back in the spring, and Randy was one of our first guests. And if you go to looking at our website and you're like, well, I can't find it, That's because we were not recording them then. We just thought it was a small thing. And it was after his call that it built so much that people were saying, we wanted to see this again, that we started recording it. So that's why we wanted to bring you back, because we didn't have any archives of what was going on.
Well, I'm glad to be back. It'll be fun to hang out today with you guys.
Well, there's probably a whole new audience of people who don't know you, who may not be familiar with you. How about introducing yourself to them and tell them whatever it is that you feel like they need to know about Randy?
Well, I think, I guess the first thing I would say is I just am a pretty normal guy. Well, a lot of people probably would question that, but just average guy who actually is really passionate about leaders. And so that's why I'm excited to be with you guys today. I believe when leaders get better, everything gets better. And when people are not well led, they really suffer and struggle. And so I get to spend all my time encouraging leaders and working with leaders. I grew up in a small town in North Georgia. My mom and dad, brother and sister, pretty simple. And then ended up out in Texas for a little while, and we came back to the South. I spent about a decade coaching and teaching in high schools and getting to work with young people. So I love young people, the next generation. I'm really passionate about that. And then I spent about 18 years working in the nonprofit world until 2014. And in 2014, I went out on my own and have been coaching and training and serving leaders for the last several years, organizations around the world, high performance companies, professional sports teams, great nonprofits. And we get to work with a lot of really cool people. And one of the groups that I've enjoyed getting to know, especially you, James, and what you're doing at GenZ, I really admire that. So yeah, I'm just glad to be here. Probably the most important thing about me is my wife of 33 years, and we have 4 daughters that are grown. I was telling the girls there before the call started that we have had 2 weddings this year, and one coming up in a couple of weeks. We had one a few weeks ago, and we actually have our first grandchild was born about 3 weeks ago. So we've packed a lot of crazy stuff into these last few weeks. So life is good, man. It's been a fun time.
A lot happening in a COVID year.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Weddings in a COVID year. That's got to be stressful. Weddings are stressful enough as it is. You add that layer on it. That's got to heighten it some.
It's been a lot of fun. So yeah, we've had a good time.
Now, Randy, I know that you and I worked together creating some curriculum for what is identified by Chick-fil-A as their frontline leaders. That's the first level of leadership. And typically, those are young leaders. True?
That's right. Yeah. I would say it's for sure at that company, they have a lot of young people that are in leadership roles. They see the potential in every leader, but especially in the young leaders. And so, yeah, for sure.
And one of the things that I remarked when I was working with you guys there in that think tank that we did over a year ago was how remarkably similar the characteristics and the areas that these young leaders needed help with align to what all young leaders need help with, whether they're late teens or mid-20s. They all seem to have that. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of get your feedback on is what are some of those areas that you guys identified, and what are y'all doing to train them?
Yeah, it was pretty fascinating. As you know, one of the reasons we asked you to come and join us was because you guys have a lot of influence and a lot of conversations with young people as well, and those next generation leaders you're passionate about. And we had several other organizations, businesses, for-profit, not-for-profit. And if you remember, James, we had about 10 of y'all in the room, and we filled up walls of things that young leaders are, I guess, if we even look back, being an old leader now, of some of the things we wish we had known when we were younger. And it was fascinating. We came up with 7 or 8 things, and we're building an app right now. And I think it's gonna be pretty cool to be able to offer that to new leaders, for them to develop their skills. We won't all be young. If some people are put into a first-time leadership role later in life, but I think the common denominator is that we all need some of those same skills. And so to answer your question specifically, some of the things we discovered was everybody needs to know how to care for their team. and if you think about any of these things, I'll talk about how to solve problems under pressure, how to delegate effectively, some of those kind of things. If I go back and rewind my clock, James, and you're probably the same way, did anybody ever teach you how to delegate? Did anybody ever teach you how to care for your people? Did anybody, and these things seem so intuitive, but it's almost like we expect them to be intuitive. We don't really train people how to do that. So we identified 7 or 8 of these skills, and we created this content around those. And we feel like it'll be bite-sized micro content that'll, I say millennial friendly. It'll be real easy for them to wrestle with, but to have conversations with their supervisors. And we're just trying to help the next generation of leaders know how to do some of those basic skills that are going to really be a foundation for them to grow into bigger leadership areas later on.
What are some of those? You talk about delegating and give feedback. What are some of the other areas?
One of them, especially if you think about a Chick-fil-A restaurant, but we talked about solving problems under pressure. And you can imagine the high speed, Sarah Beth, I think you've even worked at a Chick-fil-A, and you know how things get, and the drive-thru is going crazy, and lots going on, and things pop up. And so if you're a young leader and you've got not just responsibility for yourself, but for others, now you're trying to solve these problems, and things can get pretty fast paced. And so we've got that. As I mentioned, one of the things I'm really excited about is just teaching people how to delegate, teaching people how to care for the people that they have on their team. You move from being a peer to all of a sudden you've got a couple of people that you're now responsible in your first leadership position for caring for. So those are some of the main skills that we have, but how to have a growth mindset, how to keep working on yourself. There's several of those things that popped up that we just really let the research and the conversations we had. We actually had a chance to meet with over 600 young leaders and survey them. And so these skills that popped up are not just what we thought, but it's really what a lot of young people said. Teach us how to do this. We really need somebody to show us this. And it doesn't always pop up in orientation. So I think it's going to be a really great piece of content to help young leaders grow.
I'm glad we have these two young ladies with us, because both of them have served in leadership roles where they've had people responsible to them, and they've been responsible as the team leader on this, and they're moving into positions, one as a teacher, one as a business owner, of being able to have to learn these skills as well. So this is kind of cool that they get to see this. Am I right? Is this something you guys?
I just listening to what I've heard so far is really good, because we were in those leadership roles as state FFA officers, and so we were responsible for a group of people, and they were responsible to us, and it was a totally different role than I am in now as a leader in a business. It's just, those things, learning how to delegate, learning how to work under pressure, and how to care for people. You think about, caring for people, that's a basic, just as a human, you should care for people. Mm-hmm. And then you put it into business and you get so caught up in the pressure, and this has to be done by this time, and this has to be done. It's like a mix of, dang, I need to stop and make sure the people on my team are doing good. And so I think those are really good things that we don't think about that we need to know as young leaders. So I'm excited.
Yeah, Kinsey, one of the things we discovered was that the best we'll call it top talent, they are looking for engaged leadership wherever they go. They really want to work for we'll call it a boss who's gonna care about them, not just as an employee, but as a person. And so what you're saying there is so true. It's so easy when you're in charge, now you're leading something and you're trying to produce these results. I think sometimes we underestimate how much caring for our people and adding value to them, not just extracting value, how much adding value really will cause their engagement level to go up, is what the research shows. So it's a powerful thing to be able to put that in place, and for a leader to have that mindset. Oftentimes people don't leave organizations, they actually leave leaders who are disengaged. And so when we as leaders lean in and we love our people, we lead them well, we care about them, we've all had leaders before that were really good. We'll run through a wall for them, and we've had leaders that weren't so fun to follow as well. And so again, we're just trying to help young leaders get better.
Yeah, I've got to experience, both sides. So the business that I'm currently, working in a part of is our family business. And so my mom and dad are my bosses, and they kind of run the show here. And my mom she's exceptional at, caring for her people. And we have employees here that have been here since I was born. I mean, I have baby pictures with these people. And
wow.
They've just been with us for so long, and they're getting ready to retire. And that scares the heck out of me because I'm just coming into this business with my sister. Speaking of that, I need you to come out with a curriculum for leadership with families and leading a family business, because that's difficult too. But yeah, these people are getting ready to retire. And so me as a young leader, I'm trying to find employees to hire that are going to fill those shoes. And so having her as an example has been nice, but it's nice to have that reminder of, okay, this is how you find those people and then keep them long term.
Yeah. James, I didn't mention this, but to speak to Kenzie's point there, a couple of the other skills are how to hold people accountable. And if you think about it, Kenzie, as a young leader who, you grow up and you're in the baby pictures with these people that now you're all of a sudden, you got some of those people that you're trying to hold accountable and you're trying to lead. Or if you think about a young leader, Sarah Beth, who is just put into a role, all of a sudden you got your friends that you're working with, you get promoted, and now you got to hold them accountable. So teaching them how to do that, teaching people how to seek feedback is another one, James, that I didn't mention, but it's like, how do I continue to get better? And so I want to seek feedback from the people who are leading me, but I also want to seek feedback from the people that I'm leading. I think a lot of times leaders don't really want to hear what's going on around them. And really to their detriment. I think they're thinking it whether we ask them or not. So what we need to really have a reality check often. And so those are a couple of the other skills that we're trying to teach as well. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, one of the things that I really have enjoyed as you and I have gotten to know each other, and really how we first got to know each other, was through Mark Miller's book, The Heart of Leadership. And I have found that to be probably one of the most practical leadership books I have ever read. And I know that you created some really good curriculum related to that. And in our conversation we had in the spring, when you talked about it, it just really exploded our audience's minds on wow, they never heard of such things on this. So real quickly, to those who are not familiar with the Heart of Leadership, tell them a little bit about what that entails, what the Heart of Leadership is, and then we can kind of take the conversation and go on from there, because I really love it. I think the Heart is one of the most sticky leadership trainings I've ever seen. And when I say sticky, I mean when you get it, you get it. It's not complex, but it's also not easy. I've said this before on other things. Things may be simple, but that doesn't mean they're easy. And this is a simple leadership concept, but sometimes it's not easy to implement.
Yeah, I always say simple is powerful as well, James. I think that's so true. And there's not a lot of rocket science coming out of where we're leading from, but we do feel like it is catalytic and it is foundational. I would say it this way. I think the best leaders are servant leaders. I think the best leaders are thinking about their people as much or more than they're thinking about themselves and what they're trying to do. They understand that to accomplish a vision, you have to have people with you. And so I'll give you a picture I think that's very helpful. It's a picture that Mark and I use to talk about leadership. Mark, by the way, is VP of high performance leadership at Chick-fil-A, and he's written several books, and he and I have worked on a lot of content past that to help bring those books to life, from field guides, quick start guides. I'll actually give you guys access to a quick start guide here to everybody that's listening before we're done today. But I've done some video series for them. So we've tried to bring this content to life. And I'll go all the way back to, I probably was in 5th grade when I first saw this picture. My science teacher draws a picture up on the board of an iceberg. And little did I know that would really become maybe the best picture of leadership that I'd ever seen. It was not a leadership picture that day. She just says to us, if I recall, that most of the mass is below the waterline. I think if I'm right, it was about 90% of the iceberg is below the surface and 10% above. And I think growing up in a small town in North Georgia, we didn't have a lot of icebergs, so we just kind of take her word for it. But I did go to Alaska a couple of years ago, and I saw some real icebergs, and she was telling us the truth. There's a lot more going on underneath than there is above. And so as I think about leadership, there's two sides of it. There is what I would call the underneath side. That's the character side of leadership. And then above the waterline would be what we would call the skill side of leadership. And if you guys think about it, there are a lot of times we think about leaders based on their skills. Can they lead a meeting? Can they make a speech in public? Can they, rally and build a team? I mean, there's a lot of skills that are vital. But if we think back through presidents and or politicians, we think through great athletes, we think through preachers. There have been a lot of people that we looked at and admired as a leader, and they blew up their leadership, not because they forgot how to lead a meeting or make a speech or build a team. It's because they forgot how to keep their character in check and do some of the things that really they were supposed to do. And so we say that it starts with the heart. That's the character side of leadership. Now, before I go into that, let me remind everybody, you still have to have the skills. I mean, we know, all of us know people that we would trust them maybe with our lives. They're great people, they have great character, but they couldn't lead us out of this room. And so you have to have both. It's not just character, but character really is the foundation. We say it this way: if your heart's not right, nobody cares about your skills. And so it starts with the heart. James, you mentioned the Heart of Leadership that Mark wrote. And this book is based on an acronym for the word heart. And so I'll give it to you real quick. In the book, Mark shares the T first, because when he was asked by his publisher, which one is the most important, he said, this one is kind of the first among equals. We feel like they're all important. But the T, actually, I'll land with that one, but I'll tell you, to go back to my servant leadership comment from a moment ago, the T is to think others first. So we'll save that till the end, but let me take you through this little acronym for heart. The H is for hunger for wisdom. We think the best leaders are always hungering for wisdom. They know that the wise choice is the best choice. And so they're teachable, if you think about it that way. And especially for a young leader, if I could say anything, it would be get on a path of growth, value lifelong learning, and hunger for wisdom. And so, books, resources, there's all kinds of things that you can do. Get around a mentor, get around a coach, get around somebody that can help invest in you and just soak in all you can. Because I think what's happening now, I've got a friend of mine who says what's now is always about what's later. And so you can't control, what's going on in your organization. You can't control a world of disruption right now. But who's to say that it's not going to be even more disrupted 5 years from now? What you're doing now to prepare yourself in secret is going to be available in public later. And so I really think there's power in being teachable, this hunger for wisdom thing. The E is expect the best. We talked about that a few weeks ago on our video with your group, but expect the best is about your attitude. And it is about your sense of expectancy. Really, that word expect is really it. Do you really, as the leader, expect that you're going to succeed, expect that you're going to be able to accomplish the vision? If you don't believe it as the leader, your people will never believe it. And so I think it's very important for us to have a great attitude. I always tell people my wife and I had these 4 daughters, and when they were really small, we loved to read these bedtime stories. And I'm guessing some of y'all are Winnie the Pooh fans. Winnie the Pooh really, I love Winnie the Pooh, exactly. So much fun, says all this cool stuff, all these cool characters, Piglet and Tigger and all these. But you'll remember the character Eeyore, which was really cute in the Winnie the Pooh, the little donkey. But he's so negative, gloom and doom, the sky's falling. Fun to read in the bedtime stories. But man, if you go to work or if you go to your team and you have an Eeyore on your team, it just sucks the life out of everybody. And so as a leader, you want to race to the front of the line when it comes to positivity. You want to be the most positive person on the team. If you're the leader, you're going to set the pace for everybody else. So that's hunger for wisdom, expect the best. The A is to accept responsibility. And I'll just simply say this, the really great leaders I know, they accept responsibility for their own actions, but also the actions of those they lead. They know that the results of the organization, the results of the team, if you're the leader, it really rises and falls on your ability to accept responsibility. And if things aren't where they should be, what changes need to be made. And as a leader, that's your responsibility to get that right. The R is respond with courage. And I think the really great leaders, again, are courageous leaders. They're not comfortable leaders. I think sometimes our default is to get on this road of being comfortable, and yet really great leaders are never comfortable being comfortable. They are comfortable actually when they're being courageous, when they're stretching the limits, when they're reaching for more, when they're pushing their team, when they're achieving great results. And so I'm actually a Bible reader. I love to read the Bible, and I remember a few years ago, I had a really big decision to make in my career. Am I going to go and try to start this company to help leaders? And I was pretty comfortable in my current role, and I knew it was going to really, I was about to quit my job. We had these 4 daughters. A couple of them were in college. A couple were in late high school, wanting to go to college. My wife and I were, we love living indoors. And so am I literally going to quit my job? This felt crazy at the time. But I felt like courage is going to be required. And so as I'm reading the Bible, I'm looking for the verse that says, be comfortable. And whether you read the Bible or not, I can save you some time. You're not going to find that verse in the Bible. What you are going to find is over and over and over again, it says, be courageous, be courageous. It's almost like we have to be reminded over and over to stretch that courage muscle. But it really is like a muscle. The more we do work it, the more courageous we become. And so it's honestly like a workout. If you don't work that courage muscle out, you really will just be complacent, and really it'll lead to mediocrity. So I think for all of us, if we will be courageous and we'll reach for that next thing and we'll try stuff and not be afraid to fail, really have people around us that will go the distance with us, even when we fail, remind us that things are going to be okay. That is a great, we call these heart habits. So hunger for wisdom, expect the best, accept responsibility, respond with courage. And then, as I said at the beginning, really the first among equals is to think others first. And I think this is that idea that the best leaders really do think like servant leaders. They're not just servants, not just good character. They're servant leaders. It's both and. But they wake up and they think, how can I add value to the people around me? And I think you can't really add value to others unless you value others. And so it's just a good reminder for me that I need to wake up every day thinking, how can I help somebody else be better? And I think it was Zig who actually said, James, that if you help enough people get what they want, you'll always have what you want. And so it's that servant leader mindset. The motive is not to get what you want. Zig never said that, but it was just, how do you keep showing up and adding value to others? And when you do, it really does come back to you. So I just, again, hunger for wisdom, expect the best, accept responsibility, respond with courage, think others first. They're just great heart habits for a young leader, an old leader. Those things were needed in me 30 years ago, and 30 years from now, if I'm still around, I'm still going to have to keep working on these because, I can get complacent if I'm not careful. I can chase comfort if my attitude can get negative at times. And sometimes I can, I love me some me. I can think about myself and not other people. So for all of us, I think these heart habits, again, you just have to practice your way to high performance. So, that hopefully, again, if your heart's not right, nobody cares about your skills. But that little HEART has been a really great way for me to think about how to lead other people. And I think it'll serve everyone well.
I think, go ahead, Sarah.
Okay. I was just going to say, when I first heard of the Heart of Leadership, I was actually, me and my dad, we were driving to the mountains and we were looking through the Integrate Leadership app, and we came across it. We started listening to it, and I was playing around on Snapchat or something on my phone, nothing important. I took out my notes section. I started just writing it down. And now I'm at the point where my retiring address for serving as state president was based on respond with courage. And then now I'm making plans for my students where the first lesson for my class next semester is based on the Heart of Leadership, just because it's so important. It's so cool to even hear you talk about it and how you were able to form curriculum around it.
Yeah, that's cool. And Sarah Beth, speaking of that curriculum, if you will, and James, we can put this link on the screen, but if you will text the number 33777, if you'll just text, I think it is HOL, the letters HOL to 33777. It'll give everyone listening, and it does unlimited. Every single person will get a free copy of the Heart of Leadership Quick Start Guide that Mark and I wrote together to help activate that book. Because again, it's full of all kind of ideas and things that you're familiar with, Sarah, from the app. But those things will be helpful, hopefully, to the listeners as well, James. And I also say, Sarah, you kind of gave us a plug there on the Integrate Leadership app, but that if you go to the App Store on any of your devices, and you can download the Integrate Leadership app, and the Heart of Leadership, that lead self piece is there first, so it's available for free. So if anybody that'd be helpful to you, I would encourage them to check that out.
Well, I know.
Go ahead, Sarah.
You can go this time.
No, go ahead. I was just going to point to you again. Go ahead.
Okay. This is what I don't like about meetings online, is you can't tell who's talking. But what I was going to say is I have been going through the Heart of Leadership and other things that I can find on the Integrate app, forming curriculum. And when I was serving as state president, going through and finding stuff for workshops, is I've learned a lot about myself. And so I'm curious, as you're developing all this curriculum, what have you learned about yourself throughout all of it? What have you learned about maybe what you do well, what you don't do well, like just advice that you found that applies to your life?
Yeah, I would say a few things here. Let me start with the way we really think about leadership. We do think about the character side and the skill side. The iceberg gives us a picture. But as I started thinking about how do I grow myself, because at this point in my life, I mean, all of us, I think every leader really, but I really have got to own my own self-leadership side. Like, how am I going to grow myself? And so, and the way we work with our companies and people that we talk to, and you saw that in the app, is we think process-wise. We think that it's you have to start by being able to lead yourself. I think the hardest person I'll ever lead is me. And I think if we can all start and go, you know what, I've got to lead me first, then all of a sudden we're now positioned to become a leader that others would want to follow. And so it starts with lead self, but then there's the lead others piece. And like when we have 5 fundamental skills to lead other people. And then once you start leading others, you got a couple people, all of a sudden you do well with that, you get promoted, and now you've got a team of people. And so there's some curriculum around leading teams, and ultimately, there are people who are in charge of leading an organization. Some of you guys are talking about, you're leading an organization. And there's some moves around that. And so I like to think process. As an old school teacher, I remember the lesson plans. There was what was called a scope and sequence. If you girls can remember going back all the way to first grade, they didn't come in on day one in your math class and hand you a trigonometry book. That didn't happen in first grade. They gave you some numbers, Kenzie, Sarah Beth. They said, we're going to count them, and you started with that. And then you got where you can add them up a little bit and you could subtract them. And then you probably multiplying our times tables, maybe third grade. I don't remember, but it was like, that felt like a lot. And then you're dividing them and you get to a little geometry or fractions, whatever geometry. And, at some point you guys may have made it to trig. I never made it to trig, but people actually do. And they're able to do that, but they don't start there. And I think sometimes we put leaders into a place and we expect them to know everything up front, and we really don't train them and have a process. And so one of the things that I've really tried to do in my own life is be intentional about trying to grow every day. So this would go back to your question really is I've just said, I am going to be a learner. I'm going to make a choice to be a learner, and I'm going to build on what I learn. And over 30 years, I'm not where I was. Let's just say I've made a lot of progress. I'm not where I want to be, but I've made a lot of progress, and I'm committed to continuing to learn. And I like to say leaders that last aren't built fast. It's almost like it's like a game of Mother May I when you're a little kid. It's these baby steps that sometimes can be as powerful as anything. And yet we live in a world that wants to take these giant steps and be there. And, I have people ask me sometimes, it seems like you've gotten more successful real quick. And I would say it took 30 plus years. It's actually taken 50 plus years to become any kind of success at all. It's just a lot of grind and a lot of labor. I understand people, go viral and all that kind of stuff, but I think the leaders that really have impact work on their heart, they work on their skills, they work on their relationships, and they seek to add value, and they don't really care about notoriety or any of those things. So I think it really does go back to some of those things. One other thing I would say to your question, like one of the ways that I feel like I try to grow is, I think, and I would say this to every leader, I think if you, there's a couple ways you can think about it, but I would say to win the first hour of the day, that to me is an important part of what I would feel like would be my success. If I can take an hour in the morning to calibrate my heart, to think through my day, to know what I'm trying to do, maybe to get a little exercise, all those things that we say we don't have time for, it's that we really don't make time for. And I think when we make time for those things, they really make us more impactful. And so I think having that first hour of the day mindset, where you're going to read something, you're going to learn something, you're going to get your heart right, maybe go on a walk, whatever it is, your routine really doesn't matter as much as the fact that you have these habits ingrained. And I think about the best athletes in the world. They are the best, not because they were born that way, but because they practiced. And so, they do have tremendous physical skills, and they're unbelievable in some ways, but they really still have to put in the work. There are a lot of people with great skills. It's just when they put in that work, that hard work, and that hard work in an athlete's case, they separate themselves. And so I think that's one of the things we as leaders can do. And I think that's been helpful to me to really have a commitment to growing and a passion to learn.
So I know that you work, I know that you speak about leadership and effective teams and families. Of those, topics, which one do you enjoy, speaking on the most, and what type of, groups do you really, connect with and enjoy teaching to?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love, anytime I feel like I'm adding value to a group, I love that. So it really doesn't matter what the group is, but I would say this, I do enjoy, when I can help a business, define what it means to build a leadership culture, because I know if they can build that culture, all of a sudden it changes the level of engagement. It helps them be more aligned. Their results get better. That's all great. I love that. Also, we get to work with a lot of sports teams. That's really fun for me to get to work with athletes and coaches, and because I think that the success is so tangible. It's fun to, and the scoreboard's there, if they're winning or not. But it's the things that you really can't see that bring me a lot of joy. When there's alignment and a culture begins to change, it actually will it'll change the way a team views itself, the way it's viewed. If you think about it, there's a reason some teams seem to always win and some don't. It's not necessarily this talent discrepancy as much as it is a culture, a discrepancy. And so that's fun for me. And then I love getting to hang out with young people. I really do. I think it keeps me young. I'm an old guy, but I love being around young people. I love getting to work with them and hang out with them, because I see such possibility in them. And that really, I guess, would go to my main answer is I'm passionate about helping people become their very best. If I can help somebody maximize I believe there's greatness in every single person. And if I can help them maximize that and chase that, and sometimes I even believe people have better stuff in them than they believe they have. And so if I can help them flip that mindset and believe transformation is available to them, that fires me up. And that's a lot of fun. It gets me out of bed for sure.
Perfect.
Randy, I'm really curious. Sorry, I'm going again. I have another question, but you're just talking about your main inspiration is like helping others find their passion and like really embark on that. So I'm curious. I know that for me, when I've been in leadership roles, it's hard to know the impact that you have until it's like years and years later, or even months later after you do something. So I'm curious, what inspired you to get started with all of this, knowing ahead of time, like I might not see the impact that I have, and what's keeping you going when you can't see the impact that you're having?
Yeah, I would say a couple. That's a great question, Sarah Beth. I would say a couple things. So a few years ago, we wrote a book called Finding Your Way. And the book was actually designed to help young people, I say young people, college kids, high school kids, even college kids, people in their 20s. It was designed to help them discover what it is they're born to do. And I think there's tremendous power when you can find something that you're good at, something that you love, and something that that adds value to others, I think you really, you find a lot more joy in your work, a lot more energy in your work, easier to stay engaged. Still hard, but I think there's power in that. And so I think when I push on that and I begin to think about that, what keeps me going is knowing that I got to choose to do something with my time. And so if I feel like I'm helping leaders, to me, leaders have so much opportunity to change the worlds around them. So if I can help encourage them, because leadership is hard. It's hard to stay in the fight. It's hard to keep going. It's challenging. It's just so hard at many levels. And so they need someone to help breathe life into them. And then really to the essence of your question, how do you keep going not knowing if you're ever going to even see the fruit of that? And a lot of times you don't. A lot of times you invest in people and they end up breaking your heart, or they leave you, or they bail on you. And yet you got to remind yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? If I can add value, even if they don't value it, if I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, that there's value in that. And then I would end the answer with this. My father-in-law, actually, he passed away about 4 years ago, but he was a farmer. And he had a farm for, I don't know, probably 60 years. It was in his family, and longer than that, actually, but he owned this farm for about 60 years. And he farmed cattle, and he raised catfish at one point, but he was primarily, his heart was, he was a forester. And so he was a pine tree farmer, and it had a big piece of land, a lot of land, a couple thousand acres. And so he was planting these pine trees all the time. Well, this last year, we actually harvested some pine trees. I mean, he died 3 years before. We harvested some pine trees that he planted 30 years ago. Now think about that. He never saw the benefit of that. He never understood. I mean, he understood. That's why he planted. But there's something, Sarah, about this. There's an old Bible verse that says you reap what you sow. It doesn't say this, but the reality is you always reap later than you sow. And sometimes you don't even see what you reap. I mean, to your point, I think, even during the pandemic, I've been, I do a lot of live events. And so this year we've not been able to do those. And so I've spent extra time trying to work on myself while I'm in private, knowing that if we ever get back in public, whatever I sow now will be available later to help others. And so I think there's this mindset that you say, I got to trust, hey, let me start with what I'm supposed to be doing. And then when I do that, I got to trust that it's going to be valuable to someone. And sometimes you never know. I mean, sometimes you think that didn't help at all. And then, I had somebody a few months back, he reached out and he said, I read something that you wrote 10 years ago, and it actually helped me today, which kind of makes my brain go, whoa, how does that even happen? So I think sometimes you just have to choose what it is you want to do. You got to be faithful to do that. And then trust, that long after we're gone, there'll still be benefit of that if we're helping the right people with the right heart. So I don't know if that answers or not, but that's kind of the way I think about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It does. And someone told me one time that you have to be faithful to plant the seeds, and you might not enjoy the fruit that comes from it, but someone else will. And so that goes back to your think others first. Like, you might not enjoy what comes out of it, but someone else will. That was my state advisor actually said that to me, and I love that.
Yeah.
I think you hit it right on the head.
And I think I will say this, Sarah. I think to your point, if your motive is others first, then it really doesn't matter whether you see the fruit or not. You really keep thinking about them. And then here's the crazy thing. It doesn't say you reap later than you sow, but it also doesn't say this. I think you reap more than you sow. I think sometimes you sow and you're sowing in this group, and then all of a sudden you're reaping from over here. So I don't know how it works, but I just know when we live with an abundant mindset, we're generous in the way we view people. We try to add value. It just comes back to us. I mean, back to Zig's old quote. So it's, yeah. And I will say this, I think the other side of that coin is, what's the alternative to just make it all about yourself? And man, some of the most miserable people I know, they just think about themselves all the time. So you get to choose, but to me, it just feels like it makes more sense to try to add value rather than, to extract value. I think the more value you add, actually, the more valuable you become to leaders and the people you're trying to serve.
Yeah, absolutely. I think of it this way. Hypothetically, you plant one tomato seed, you get countless tomatoes for a whole season, enough for you and enough for everyone else. So,
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
that's good.
She planted tomato seeds at our house before the pandemic started, and the squirrels have enjoyed them as much as we have. There have been an overabundance of tomatoes in this house.
Good.
So when she said that, I was thinking, she knows that firsthand because we've got tomato seeds everywhere. And then she left and went off to college and left us with all the tomatoes. So. Well, part of to what you just said about planting and maybe not even singing it, this show is what our goal is, to be able to plant some seeds and some young leaders into youth as they go forward. So how can our audience reach out to you, connect with you, and get more information about some of these things that they've learned this morning about leadership? Because I know these two young ladies well enough to know that they wish they had known this material when they were 14 and 15 years old, as they were just starting opportunities in organizations that were giving them leadership roles. They were taught really good principles, but these are just kind of, to me, these kind of open the light. So how can folks find out about you? How can our audience find out more about you?
Yeah, the simplest way is probably just go to randygravitt.com. We're there. They can, reach out there through the site, but I'm on Twitter at Randy Gravitt. I'm on Instagram at Randy Gravitt. Just basically, I'm there. We do have a podcast that we do 3 times a week right now. We've got a Monday is one of the guys on my team. We just do some stuff for leaders and organizations. But Wednesday, I'll mention this, and I think this might be something for your audience, is that we do a self-leadership. I mean, our whole thing's kind of around this idea of you leading yourself first. But I think there's so little in the self-leadership space. And so I do a show on Wednesdays to help leaders really lead themselves. I mean, I think it's so challenging. And then we usually have a guest on Fridays. So I would encourage people to reach out there. Sarah Beth mentioned earlier the Integrate app. It's available at the App Store. And then again, I would just encourage people to download the free Quick Start Guide at 33777 HOL. They can get that. So I'm out there. People can reach out. I'll give you my cell number. If anybody needs a call, feel free. It's 678-858-1167. The voicemail stays kind of full, but feel free to text. And if you call and I'm available, I'll answer. So I would love to hear from anyone out there. It's great. And yeah, we're out here. So give us a yell.
And all that information, guys, is going to be in the show notes. So if you didn't get it as he said it, if you'll just look down and click more, you'll see it in the show notes. So, Randy, thank you. Thank you again for agreeing to come and being a friend to Generation Ziegler and providing us with value. You talk about adding value. Every time you come in and speak, and every time I have an opportunity to interact with you, you give value to me. And I really do appreciate that. And I appreciate your commitment to this group, to Generation Ziegler, and I know to these young ladies as well.
That's great. Well, thank y'all. I'm really grateful for the opportunity, and I wish you all well.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
And to our audience, thank you for joining us, and be back again next week for another episode.